very interesting, because he said that this may be so,
yes,
and Weizmann may have come to the United States with the idea of a Jewish Commonwealth,
yes,
but during the Biltmore Conference,
yes,
he, Judge Leventhal, was the person who formulated the resolution, because he was in charge of the committee that formulated it, and they heard a number of people, they consulted a number of people, amongst them yourself, and of course Weizmann was consulted, but he said the main idea and the main drive came from Ben Gurion. Now, that was his story.
uh-huh.
You see, he had prepared himself for this interview.
Uh-huh.
He told me there were no minutes taken at that committee meeting. And I wouldn't have sort of insisted on this point, because it's really trivial who suggested what.
Who killed Cock Robin?
Yes, but it didn't become so trivial afterwards, because he added that in fact Weizmann did not go along wholeheartedly with the resolution. It was a resolution which he accepted because he couldn't very well fight it. He didn't put it in these words, but that was the tenor of his argument.
The tea is going to get cold, which is very important for the conversation.
Yes.
And the cookies are very good. Even more important than Judge Leventhal's recollection of what happened.
Yes. Now, this disturbed me a bit, because
yes,
in my book I wrote the story differently.
Yes.
You see, I thought that what happened actually was that everyone had read Weizmann's article.
Yes.
This was the program which now had to be translated into the form of a resolution.
No.
If you recollect the resolution, it's a very long one.
I
It
know.
has 8 points. Only the last point deals with the Jewish Commonwealth. All the other ones are internal matters and general Jewish matters, not directly concerned with Palestine. Now, I argued that the original idea had come from you, in my book, that Weizmann had come to America, had found things more or less prepared, had agreed to the resolution as formulated in a committee on the basis of your idea, and that's that.
Well,
now, what do you say about it?
now I will tell you something. That the memorandum is a fact. That's a fact, isn't it?
Yes.
That Weizmann wrote an article in the Foreign Affairs long before the Biltmore Conference is also a fact. Weizmann always used to say, at Zionist congresses, that it does not want to use the term the Jewish state or Jewish Commonwealth, because to him this was the Shem Amferish. The Shem Amferish. You can find this in many of the records. And therefore the Shem Amferish should not be used lightly. Should be used only on special occasions when the situation demands it. This was his philosophy. And as a matter of fact, if you read the story behind the story of the Peel Commission, you see what feeling he went away from that meeting when he heard the word, the Jewish state partition. I don't know, betchille irechima, you know. I hope you'll forgive my Hebrew, you know.
I know.
Yeah, right, now. Well, let me say the following. Of course, the name Biltmore Conference really doesn't mean anything. It means only because it happened we couldn't get the place in another hotel, so we had it in the Biltmore Hotel, and that's what the name was derived from, the fact that it was the Biltmore Conference. Now, as a matter of fact, there were months of discussion before this conference and before Weizmann arrived at meetings of the Emergency Council. And as I said in my letter to the Observer, if you will recall, many formulas were prepared. Everybody had a hand. The real author of the resolution, because he was the finest stylist in the English language, was Louis Lipsky. irrespective of who happened to be the chairman or the member of the standing committee, what you call it. And now Mr. Lurie claims he was the author. Well, I scotched that business very quickly. There wasn't a single step. Now this I'm telling you. There wasn't a single step taken at the Biltmore conference without first getting the approval of Dr. Weizmann. Of course, the speech that Ben Gurion made, that was his. He emphasized, you know how he emphasizes things, you know, and laid the emphasis and so forth, etc. But during the conference, before the resolution was introduced, we had a luncheon at the same bloody hotel. And before the resolution went to the committee for final ratification and what you call linguistic modifications, which always usually happen after you decide on the main points, it was shown to Dr. Weizmann. I brought it to him myself at the luncheon. Ben Gurion was there and all the big matters were there at that particular luncheon. It was in between the morning session and the afternoon session. He read it and he said, let it go. Maybe the language has to be straightened out a bit, but that wasn't important. But the fact that this was contained there, I think it was Commonwealth, not Jewish state. Commonwealth. He approved. He approved because he had made his position clear. Not before because of the Biltmore conference, because he made it clear before in this article. Now you say because Weizmann couldn't help himself, there was no coercion because Weizmann wouldn't allow himself to be coerced in any such matter. And I don't know where Mr. Leventhal gets his goddamn recollection that he couldn't help himself. Ben Gurion, Meir, like everything else, he appropriated the conference, you see. He appropriated everything else, you know. I've heard a wonderful story today, isn't it? You know, Moshe Rabbeinu, are you interested in the story?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's a story of Moshe Rabbeinu became an old man, and he wanted to go into the Holy Land, bring the Jews in. After all, he made all the preparations. So God told him, you can't go, brother. You have to. So Moshe said, look here, Father, after all, look what I did. I brought the Jews out, and I carried them around for 40 years, and now when it comes the final chance to go in there, you tell me I can't. So God told him, look here, you haven't been behaving quite well. You instead of speaking to the rock, you hit it, and therefore you can't go in. He says, well, at least can I have a look? Well, he says, that I'm a compassionate father, and I think of it. So he put him up on the Har Nevo, and told him, look, he stood there, and he saw Yeshua going in there, one battle winning, another battle winning, and the Jews going across, everything was wonderful. He couldn't take it anymore. He is the guy who did all the goddamn things. Then came Joshua, and he collected all the glory going in there. So he turned to God and said, Father, I'd rather die, he said, than look at all these bloody things. And that's why we don't know where Moses is dead, where he's buried, and so on, etc. Finished, he said, I preferred death to seeing the other guy getting all these kudas. Now, it reminds me of what's going on in this country nowadays. You know, Eshkol is Joshua, but this guy is the only trouble if he doesn't stay. He wants to come back. He doesn't want to die. He wants to come back. You see, there is a difference between him and Moses. You see,
it's one of the differences.
One of the yeah. So I am telling you now. Of course. It all depends who writes things, you know. Everybody. Why do you think so many autobiographies are written? Because everybody else writes it from his own point of view. He only remembers the things that he writes, you see, that he said and he does. All the others don't exist, you see. Now Bertolt Brecht says in one of his plays, or has one of his characters say, I see that Alexander the Great was there at the great battle and he won the great battle for the Roman Empire and so forth, etc. I wonder, was anybody else there besides Alexander? And gives a few other characters. Napoleon says he was there at this particular battle. Wasn't there anybody else there? That's the whole trouble with thing, you see. The leaders assume for themselves the privilege that they had won. The fact that tens of thousands of young people gave their lives, that hundreds of thousands of Jews did everything in the world that any people could do to help create a state, that doesn't matter. The fact that it was preceded by a slaughter of 6 million, that doesn't matter either. There's only one thing that remains. Ben Gurion established a state, I'm asking you, did he establish a state? The state was established long before, but only he proclaimed the state. That's true. He proclaimed the state at a certain given hour. But he didn't establish it. The state was established. It took 30, 40, 60 years before this state was established.
At least.
At least. I mean, it took 2,000 years for that matter. But the state was established from 1884 until 1948. The state, one stage after the other, sometimes with greater impetus, sometimes with less impetus. That's how we had to establish the facts first. And this was the greatest contribution that Weisgal could make to the establishment of the state, establish the facts. Because if there had been no Jews, if there had been no cow on a cow and a stone on a stone and a barn on a barn, and Jews settling the land and having kibbutzim and so forth, and there had been no Haganah, there would have been no state, you know. Even if there had been no Etzel, there would have been no state. We have to reckon with all this. But in other words, it was a combination, a concatenation of circumstances that created all these things. If there had not been the revulsion of the Jewish people against what happened in Europe, there certainly would have been no state. And what's more, I think that the one guy that should get really a monument in this country is Bevin.
Oh, yes.
If Bevin had agreed to the 100,000, which, by the way, Ben Gurion agreed to.
To be honest.
Only honest.
He, you know, that is an interesting point, but we'll come to that in a second.
Yeah.
Now, to come back to 1942. Now, all right, now that settles one point.
Yes, settles one point, yeah.
Now, the next point, you say in your interview with Mr. Kimchi,
yes,
that it really isn't, the quarrel between Weizmann and Ben Gurion isn't really important. And you don't want to go into it because there are more important things than that.
That's right.
Now, I've read the documents.
Which document?
The Weizmann-Ben Gurion correspondence in America, and the protocol, you know, and all that.
Yeah.
It is important. I disagree with you on this. And it is important, I think, because of one major point.
Yes.
You said before that Ben Gurion appropriated the conference. Now, he not only appropriated the conference, he changed the whole content and tenor of the decisions taken there. The quarrel between himself and Weizmann was not known in Palestine at that time, as you know, because you wrote a letter in July to Agronsky. Gershon Agronsky.
Have you got the letter?
Yes, Gurion has got it.
You haven't got the goddamn letter.
Oh yes, I've got it here.
I've got it
in microfilm, but I've got it.
I've been looking for that letter and I can't find it. Maybe I'll make you my historian, you know. I'm looking for that letter.
Oh,
Me when I called him a dancing dervish.
That's right.
That's the one I remember.
No. In that letter, you see.
Yes.
You were the first person, and afterwards Lipsky, who gave Kaplan and Agronsky the news about the quarrel between Ben Gurion and Weizmann.
Yes.
But it wasn't the quarrel that's important, but Ben Gurion, after all, changed the meaning of the Biltmore Conference. He changed it into a Nordau plan, into a renewed Nordau plan. And when he came to Palestine, he was the sole interpreter.
Have you got the minutes of the Biltmore Conference?
It's there, it's here.
There are minutes, there's two enormous volumes there.
Well,
I opened the goddamn conference there.
Yes, I know, it's all there.
Well, I've never read it. I'd like to read it again.
Now, you see, the conference really said that the British should declare that they want to create a Jewish Commonwealth, and then the Jews would get control over immigration, and then slowly, in a period of 3, 5, 10 years, there would be a majority in the state. Now, Ben-Gurion changed this concept, and he said masses of Jewish refugees in Europe, with the help of American liberty ships, would come to Palestine within 1 year, 1 million, 2 million people in 1 year, change in a catastrophic way the whole situation here and create a Jewish state. Now, this interpretation, which Weizmann rejected completely, he brought to Palestine, he convinced here the Jewish Agency executive and the Vada Poel Tzioni, who were not aware of what had gone on in America, and having established the fact, then faced Weizmann and said, look, this is the proper interpretation of the Biltmore Conference resolution. Therefore, I say there is some importance in the quarrel, not because of the quarrel, but because of this switch. Because he went away from America, as you put it in your letter, a defeated man. He was rejected by all the Zionist leadership in America. Ben-Gurion.
Yes.
And he came to Palestine as a great victor.
Yes, certainly, because I'll tell you why.
Because nobody knew.
You know why? No, not why. Because he distorts facts. He twists.
Excuse me, but he didn't distort facts. He did it much more elegantly.
All right, elegantly. So what did he do?
He went to the Jewish Agency executive. I read the minutes.
Yeah, this I don't know what it is. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll tell you now. It's very short. And they asked him, we heard about differences of opinion between yourself and Weizmann.
Yeah.
He said, yes, there were differences of opinion between myself and Dr. Weizmann, but as Dr. Weizmann is not here, it would be unfair of me to relate what the differences are. Consequently, I shall remain silent, but I shall interpret for you the Biltmore Conference resolution.
It's also a geweldige chachma, you know. Tremendous
And that is, you see, that is the way in which he did it. Now, what I would like, therefore, to know is what he actually said at that meeting before he left America. If you can
that I
recollect
couldn't
that.
tell you. I really don't know. I couldn't tell you, and I can assure you that we haven't heard of any particular interpretation of what it all meant over there. This was all invented when he got there. Now, what I ask you, in all honesty, when I'll come to you and say, look here, I'm sorry, my friend is not here, and I cannot tell you what happened, the difference between us. But if you want, I'll give you my own interpretation of what happened. Now, I ask you, what is the difference?
It's the same thing.
Same goddamn thing, except it's a purely dialectical business, you know, that he creates a hin in the hair, you know, but what the hell, I mean.
That's why I say that I'd like to know what he said there.
I don't know, I wasn't there, I don't know, maybe I was there, maybe I didn't hear.
You were there, you must have been there.
Where, at the what?
At the last meeting, the night before he left the state.
When we had this private...
This 30 people meeting.
Well, that I can tell you right now. First of all, that meeting... Now let me start from the beginning, before the meeting took place. One day, I get a call from Ben-Gurion. He was then staying at what they called the kibbutz 14 East 60th Street. There was a hotel there, and he was staying there. Weizmann was staying at the St. Regis Hotel. I came to see him, and he gave me a whole long explanation of what he wanted. The substance of it was, can you find me 30 Jews who will follow me blindly? He will do what I ask him without asking any questions. And then he developed the whole theory about the fight that's going to ensue, and what's going to happen after the war, and what danger we are, and so forth. But I don't have to tell you all these things. And how we need the weapons, we need machinery, we need science, we need all these goddamn things. It was a meeting that lasted just between him and me, that lasted about 2 or 3 hours. I remember today, he was lying stretched out on a big bed, and the bigger the bed, the smaller he looks, you see. And I remember I eingeschrunken, So I listened. He knew my views, he knew my association with Weizmann very well. So I said to him, BG, I'll give you an answer in 24 hours. To which he replied, I suppose you want to discuss it with your boss. You're right, exactly. I want to discuss it with him. I want to hear what he's got to say. I came to Weizmann. Immediately from 60th Street, it went down to 55th Street. It was already been a shmoshes, and I told him the whole story. Weizmann was sitting in his usual habit like this and listening, and he didn't say yes, he didn't say no. He rose up, and as I was walking out, he said, no, lass dich herumdrehen an jedem Stub. Since I knew all his nuances, in all his Chochmah de Gewette, I knew already what he meant. Don't ask me. Maybe this will help. If nothing else will help, maybe this will help. Hast du nicht Kanadian, hast du nicht keine Tochter? This was his reply. Then I said to Ben Gurion, I'm ready to help. I want Manto to be in the business because he knew all these rich Jews. And we gathered together a number of Jews in his private home, and it was secret to be secret. And everybody was sworn to secrecy. Zaslani was there. His Anyemenyench is there. Now, it was not a political speech with a political formulation whatsoever. Ben Gurion immediately gave the situation of the dangerous position of the Jews in Palestine, and what it will be necessary to do, that they are armless, they haven't got this, they haven't got that, and will need all sorts of bloody things, and are you prepared to follow me and help me? And they all said, we will. And we actually did. The boats and the guns, and then he sent this fellow who never had a Rahmanus of the Meeden, this engineer, I forgot his name, or Ginger, an engineer, a very brilliant guy, but Meshuggah, nobody can work with him, who really was the main guy who gathered together all the various implements of war and sent over here under the rubric of some other damn thing. It was a crossword puzzle how these things came across, And but that meeting was not a meeting that could decide or would decide or was asked even to decide. This was at the hoc number of people who had no political orientation whatsoever. If you take the list of the people who were there, you can see that there were none of the Zionist leaders were there. It wasn't intended to be. It was intended to bring together a group of Jews who had money, who were UJ, or whatever you may call it, you see, and had a certain leaning toward Palestine, etc. And they were asked to do certain things, to gather money, to help in the purchase of weapons, to use their influence, and all sorts of things. But this was not an official meeting of either of the Zionist Organization or the Emergency Council or anything else. It was a private meeting of 30-odd individuals. I can tell you the names of some of them. You would never believe that they were interested in such things. There's a guy by the name, for example, of Israel Lifshitz, one of the guys who helped build our institute here. There were a guy by the name of Goldenberg was there, Rudolf Sonneborn. There were Ezra Shapiro. He was nearer to the Zionist business than anybody else. There were all kind of, there was a sort of a concoction of people that had no official standing, and it wasn't desired to have an official. On the contrary, this was supposed to be absolutely confidential, secret, with no relationship whatsoever to the whole bloody business.
And that was on the... That
had to do only with preparation for war.
Yeah. That was on the eve of his departure.
That was the eve of his departure. It happened to be on a Sunday. I remember it was the day, on a hot 3rd of July or 1st of July day. I remember that.
He left in September.
But
he left in September. Was there a meeting before he left in which he said that one should organize 2 or 3 million Jews to come immediately after the war to Palestine?
I don't remember any such meeting. I don't remember.
Because Weizmann mentioned a thing like that, and I was trying to locate where that meeting had taken place.
I don't.
Weizmann writes a letter to Buffy Dugdale.
Yes.
And in that letter he says
Yes.
that before his departure,
Yes.
Ben-Gurion called together a number of people,
Yes.
and to their great amazement, he
Yes.
told them what he thought the Bismarck resolution meant.
Yes.
Which is something quite different than
It's quite
what
possible.
Weizmann,
It's not the first time that Ben-Gurion missed.
No, I thought you knew about it.
I don't know that meeting. At any rate, I don't remember.
You don't remember.
I don't remember. If I saw the letter, maybe something would be revealed to me.
Yeah.
Because many things have happened to me, have caused a recall by looking at certain documents which I hadn't seen for God knows how many years.
Yes.
I didn't remember, for example, all the details that happened at the American Jewish Conference, you see, which was a direct creation of Dr. Weizmann.
Yeah.
A direct creation of him. He was the author of this goddamn thing. Did anybody call it that he was the author of the American Jewish Conference? First of all, let me tell you something. Many times, you do certain things, and you don't want to be mentioned. It's better, what this rabbi who was told that he was away from home for a number of months, and he was told that his wife gave birth to a child. He was away for over a year. So how did it happen? He said, take geschrieben, that when you do the work of the Lord, there are others who do your work for you. You see? Now, it's always better that others do the work for you. You see?
Yes,
Yeah.
well, I understand that. That I understand. All right, well, then that is...
Look.
I'm trying to look for...
Well, you want to know, I don't know, listen, somebody, when you go...
yes, here.
When you go on by, he always writes, you talk and he writes. He doesn't look up, he doesn't answer, you never have a kind of conversation with him. It's in Schleifer, you ever seen that?
Well, I've never met him.
You never met him?
No, I refuse to see him. There's no point, because I've seen his diary,
Yeah?
and that's much more important, and whatever he has to add is not really very interesting.
Somebody asked him, what is he doing? What is he writing there? I said, very simple, he's falsifying history, that's all. Yeah?
We can have some more tea.
No. Do you want some more tea?
No, thank you very much. Lots of that.
Yeah.
It's in a letter by Weizmann to Weiss
Why, yeah?
on October 21st, 1942.
Yeah?
I have it in Hebrew, English,
Yeah.
quotations and so
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
It's peculiar, he said, it's not a quotation, that Ben-Gurion had not talked about 2 million people coming in immediately all the time.
Yeah?
Quotation, to have blurted it out in a few hysterical sentences.
Yes?
כמה שעות, כמה שעות לפני עזיבתו.
כמה שעות לפני...
עזיבתו, before he left America.
Yeah.
And he has not chosen to discuss it with his friends in America, of whom he expects primarily the carrying on of the burden.
Yes?
And he says that he and Shertok had talked about 100,000 immigrants a year,
Yeah?
quote,
That's right.
quote, and not of the one-time transfer of 2 million, which Mr. Ben-Gurion is discussing at present. All these mock heroics are disquieting, most harmful and demoralizing.
Yes?
That's his
Well,
letter.
that has been Weizmann's
So you don't know about...
point of view. No, I'm sure that he must have said so, and probably seeped through to Weizmann that he called a secret meeting of some people, and he told them this business. But the truth of the matter is that we did not transport 2 million people at one time.
Now I have another question.
Yes,
Were you connected in any way in 1944?
yes.
You came through Cairo, didn't you?
Yes.
You talked to Moyne.
I didn't talk to Moyne. On the day when I arrived in Cairo,
Oh, he was
Moyne was
murdered.
murdered. The very day I arrived in Cairo,
Uh-huh.
he was murdered. I was
Now, do
telling you.
you know anything
Yes.
about this complex, starting with the Yoel Brandt mission,
Yes,
with the attempt by Weizmann to get the Americans and the British to bomb the railways, the Auschwitz and so on?
yeah.
Were you connected with this in any way?
Well, it connected to the extent that I knew exactly what Weizmann was trying to do and how he was suffering when they refused to do this business. Oh yes, I know very well. It's very curious, you know. My visa to Israel, to Palestine in those days, was given by Moyne. I mean, I couldn't have gone here during the war because there was no possibility of any civilian going from America to. I came here in a military plane, and the only way I could get on a military plane was by permission of Lord Moyne.
Yeah.
Dr. Weizmann used his influence with Lord Moyne to let me go. I couldn't even pay for the goddamn thing. And Isaiah Berlin was at that time the first secretary of the British Embassy, gave me the stamp by authority of Lord Moyne. You see. When I came to Egypt, on the day I arrived, big headlines, Lord Moyne murdered, you see. And I have many recollections of that particular visit, you know, to Palestine in
Tell me something about it.
Well, in the first instance, you see, the train ride from Cairo to Rehovot was a very interesting one. First, I made the acquaintance of a guy who was sitting in the next cabin. And we talked. I didn't know who the hell he was. And then he had some food there. Food wasn't exactly very plentiful in those days. He had put in a chicken, all kinds of Geschichten. So we became friendly, we sat and talked, one Jew to another. The next morning when we crossed the border, or on the verge of the border, this Jew was taken out of his cabin, completely undressed, and searched all over the goddamn place there. And I heard about this racket. I got terribly mad. I went, what the hell is going on? What's he doing? He said, get back to your goddamn cabin and don't interfere in our business. So I was boiling mad. And then when they came in to me, after this intervention, take down the bags. So I gave him a straight and put it with Shirashirim. I said, if you want to see the bags, take them down yourself. So like British, machers take down the bags, So he called one of the Schwarze, bring them down. And I didn't mind, let him do it, but I had nothing there to hide. So after he got through and schwitzing, I took out a letter which was from Lord Moyne, to whom it may concern. Mr. Weisgal, traveling as a guest of the British government, any courtesy that may be extended to him will be greatly appreciated. Something along that line. Signed, Lord Moyne. One of these form letters, that they give. When I gave him this letter, after he had done all this, he turned white. He said, but tell me, what should I tell you? I'll tell you, actually, he said, I'm a newspaper man. I came here to see what was going on. But there were so many exaggerations about how the British behaved, and I didn't believe it. So I asked the British government to let me come here and see for myself. Well, I'm very grateful and very thankful to you because you gave me the first story that I have to write. Well, that of course, I didn't tell him that I had to sign a piece of paper that I would not write a goddamn word. I couldn't have gotten an invitation to go if I were to use this as my journalistic career, you see. I had to sign in Washington a piece of paper. I will not write anything of what I see or do or hear. I wrote anyhow after I got back, but this was understanding. So, sure enough, he immediately, after we landed here, he immediately got in touch with the public information office in Jerusalem, which was in the David building. You know the David building?
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 days later, I got a very cordial invitation to come and have tea with the with the macher there. I forgot his name. Julian Melson will remember his name. And tea, very courteous, and you know, in Klachayad, you know, he says, tell me, you going to write anything about this country? Well, I knew that he knew, you see. I said, nah, I'm not here in that capacity. I'm here just to see for myself. I have no intention of writing anything at all. Because he knew already the story of what had happened on the train. Well, there were fantastic things that were happening. Incidentally, that letter that you're talking about, the Gershon-Agronsky, fell into the hands of the British Foreign Office. You know that, don't you?
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you. Funny story, you know. When Isaiah Berlin came to America, I didn't know him. And one day he came to New York to meet Dr. Weizmann, and I came up there. Oh, Shayaw, I want you to meet my friend Meir Weisgal. So I said, oh, he says, I know him. He is, you know, a mock behavior, you know. Looking in his booklet, he is number 3,855,677, you know, in my file in the Foreign Office. I look at him, what the hell is that? He says, well, did you write a letter to a certain guy by the name of Gershon-Agronsky, which was intercepted by the British, which came to his desk, you see? And he said, I read the letter, I know your views, I know your fees, I know everything. He said, after we made a positive copy of it, we forwarded the letter to Agronsky. In other words, that letter, and you must remember another thing, because I suspected that this letter might be intercepted, I wrote it in such a form as to disguise many of the things I really wanted to say. You see?
Yeah. Well, that's
I never saw that bloody letter.
I've got it here.
Have you got it here?
Well, I've got the précis of it.
What is it?
It's short.
It was a long letter.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I've got the microfilm. Well, that won't be any use to you because...
And he got the letter here?
Yeah, sure.
I've asked him many times, he doesn't know anything about it.
Sure, I got it from him. He sent it to me.
He got it? Yeah.
You wrote about 4 points.
Yeah.
One was the Newman incident, where Newman was sent by the Executive Council to Washington and BG accused him of political negotiations.
Oh, but accused Newman.
Because Newman was conducting negotiations and Ben-Gurion, what that was Ben-Gurion.
Who never asked you, mi samcho.
Then the second business with the Wertheim negotiations, which you started and then he carried on a different basis, and then you came up to him and said, why don't you consult anyone, and so on. That was the second point of difference. And then the third one was the business of the Army Committee, where he refused to have anything to do with the Yehuda people.
Yes, right.
As a result,
we could have had peace.
Yes.
We could have had peace. I swear to you that there need not have been this whole monkey business if this guy hadn't changed his mind. At first he said, go ahead, and then all of a sudden, because he was more interested in party business than in actually making peace.
1942, they were very weak. They were quite prepared to do anything.
I'm telling you, I dealt with what's his name, with Hillel Cook, or whatever his name, Bergson. They were ready to come in and make peace and instead of making this whole goddamn fuss over there.
And
he scotched it. He scotched the whole bloody thing, yeah.
And then you mentioned the famous meeting, this meeting.
Which meeting?
The meeting at Weis's.
Oh yes, when Weizmann was accused of...
made a series of indictments. The burden of the indictment was that Weizmann was acting alone, that he has been making... making and continues to make political mistakes, that if we have no Jewish army, he is responsible for that.
Yes.
Continues along these lines, he cannot assume responsibility, and therefore we'll have to ask for his resignation.
It's a repetition, my dear boy, of what's happening today.
Oh, today is a repetition of what was happening then.
Oh, today is a repetition of what is happening then, what happened throughout his career, you see.
Precisely.
Precisely. The pattern does not change at all. If he is bent upon getting somebody and crucifying him, he is going to get it no matter what happens. He will resort to any method whatsoever. Nothing will stop him. Nothing.
Yes, now that's the... Now, to come back to this then, this matter of crucifixion...
Don't forget, that letter was fresh, it isn't today, you know.
Yeah.
How many years? 42, this is 65. It's how many years? 23 years already. And I remember that letter, and I'll tell you why I remember it. Because when Shetok came to America, afterwards, he refused to talk to me. He refused to talk to me. He says, Rabban Bakru. Get a answer. I have violated, I have attacked his rabbi, you know. Rabban Bakru. You know the famous story about Yochanan ben Zakkai, you know, Rabban Bakru. And that I left Majesty, you know. And then, of course, it was a big bet, you know. And I had many talks with him afterwards.
Pardon me, but what did you tell Mr.
The matter of the final crucifixion, 1946 at Basel.
In Basel, yes.
Now, there is only the official protocol of the Congress,
yes.
which doesn't say anything.
No, of course not. Congress doesn't say anything.
No. And the meetings of the committees, not to speak of the meeting of the cafes, which are the really important ones, are completely missing.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to have any recollection that you could possibly recollect of the Congress. I know the story of you coming there and being a delegate of Mapai and resigning and being delegate of Goldman. That I know.
Yeah.
Don't know anything beyond that, especially not about the actual discussions that were going on inside about the activism, anti-activism, Weizmann, Ben Gurion conference and non-conference and so on.
Yeah. Well, all I can tell you, I mean, I wasn't privy to all these conferences because I excluded myself. You see, I came to the first caucus meeting of the Mapai, to which I was a delegate, and after this meeting, and I saw the shenanigans that were going on, and how Mr. Ben Gurion was carrying on, I took the card and I gave it back to him and said, take it and, you know, stick it up, you see. Because I couldn't be a party to this kind of business. Now, it's the same thing again, you see, the same pattern, you see. He used every device, legitimate and illegitimate, in order to get Weizmann out of the leadership. Just as he's doing today, one day this way, the next day something else, to murder Eshkol. Exactly the same thing happened. And he would make allies. He had an ally of Mr. Sneh, had an ally of Mr. Silver. He used all the instruments, anyone, in order to achieve his purpose. Because as a matter of fact, in the Mapai, he was a minority. He never won a majority vote for this business. And what happened? What was the whole issue? Should we go to the conference? Should we not? That was the whole point. And they said, no, we don't go. This was regarded as a, Weizmann could have said, I ignored this thing too. Like many governments do, I ignored this resolution. I don't take it as a vote of confidence or a vote of lack of confidence. He could have said that too. But he said, no, he doesn't want to be a part of this kind of business. Because what happened? After they did go, except instead of going to the front door, they went to the back door. That's all. The context is that he wanted to get rid of Weizmann, that's all, period. And all the maneuvers that happened there were for this one purpose, that's all. Finished.
Yes, but how did he manage to get the Mapai behind him when he was a minority?
Because he made a combinations of other parties, because after all, the Mapai alone wasn't enough, you see. They had to have a coalition of parties.
But Mapai split in the voting, didn't it?
Yes. It split in the voting.
A minority supported him.
A minority, but a large minority, but they supported him. Kaplan and a few others and so forth, they were dead against the whole business, you see. And I know one of the most miserable men at this conference was Eliezer Kaplan, you know. But he did it in a way, but he's doing it all the time. I don't know what the hell is going to happen now in this business. Have you, listen to me, you're supposed to be an historian, all right? Yeah, all right. And when you see the shenanigans that are going on, you know, first, doesn't want to come back, wants to come back, he's going to call me back, Listen, I get sick when I talk about it.
But that's present.
Present,
That's connected with Weizmann. I thought, you see, that the rejection of Weizmann was a major turning point in Jewish history, Zionist history. And the Baal, that Congress in 1946, which was, as a Congress, was a failure, is important because of that. Now you see.
What do you mean the rejection? What do you mean?
Well, they removed him from the leadership, and yet whenever they needed him, they'd call him.
That's right. Pull them out.
But they never gave him power. They only let him to pull out the chestnuts from the fire.
That's right. Exactly. You put it right. Exactly.
Now, therefore, you see, I see that the removal of Weizmann from power, not from influence, because they couldn't do that.
That's right.
From power is a vital turning point in the whole business. Now, what I would like to ask, you see, is there was a vote there. There were for and there were against. As you say, for against the conference. The actual resolution didn't mean anything.
No, it didn't mean.
But the voting meant because it removed Weizmann.
Yeah.
There was a 25 vote difference. Now, Hashomer HaTzair abstained.
Yes.
Now,
if they had not abstained,
he would have remained in power.
He would have remained in power.
Now, isn't that so?
Yes, exactly.
That is so.
That is definitely
so.
So.
Have your...
You know, I'll tell you why, because that's the stupidity of the Shomar HaTzair of it, you know. They don't know where the hell they are. They don't even know today where the hell they are.
They put up a purely ideological resolution without any reference to reality.
Exactly. If they had not obtained power from the vote would have been totally different. That's all.
Now that's what I want.
And the truth of the matter is, Weizmann was tired already. Was tired of all this.
Do you think he wanted to resign?
He didn't want to resign. He felt that. After the tragedy and all everything that happened, you see, and he was partly blind, you see, already. He was a broken man. And I think he regarded this, you know, just like Mrs. Churchill said to Churchill in 1945 when he was defeated. It says, Winston, this may be a blessing in disguise. Well, so Churchill answered it's a blessing too much disguised. Maybe he might have thought the same way. But I must tell you a curious incident. I remember that when Weizmann was defeated and he was packing up to leave Bauer to go to some place there, the miserable time altogether, you see, in the dry Koeniger. Mrs. Ben-Gurion was sitting on the doorstep waiting for him to move out of the apartment so they can take over the apartment. It was both tragic and funny at the same time. When wollen Sie fahren? When wollen Sie wegfahren? He wollte übernehmen the apartment there. I tell you, it's funny.
Now there's another point, one more point that I would like to bring up. There is, I discussed this very thoroughly with Guriel.
Yeah.
Weizmann was a man, and there I agree with Guriel. Weizmann was a man who, although he was very pro-British and he hoped that there would always be a coalition between the Jews and Britain, he was nevertheless, he was capable of being very hard and very steadfast against standing up against the British. Now, what surprised me and what surprised Guriel much more than it surprised me was certain evidence that we both collected which tends to show that Weizmann was not only hard against the Germans after the destruction,
Yes.
but he was actually filled with hatred. And he was prepared to do the most terrible things in order to take revenge. Do you know anything of that?
Well, I do know a great deal about it. He was, as a matter of fact, you see, let me say the following to you. People think that Weizmann was a pacifist under all circumstances.
Oh, no, I know that.
Tapes are going to show.
That I know, yeah.
And actually, what he hated, what he calls his makkeroids, talking to God and much. Now, for example, when he gave me the answer, 1942, you know, and you know exactly all that you do. Go and do, and don't talk. Very practical. Now, I'll give you an interesting fact. Do you know that Weizmann made the first 500-pound contribution, real pound, not the Egertrek. First 500-pound contribution he gave to Danny Schind for illegal immigration.
Yes, in 1934.
Whenever it was. At that time, Mr. Ben Gurion was against illegal immigration. You know that too?
Yes.
He said, gay and too oberanished. Because what he was interested was to create facts. Being a scientist, all these theories, these speeches and Gewaltige, you know, is garbage. But let's create the facts here. Facts, bring in Jews, build colonies, build settlements, do this. This will create a Jewish state, and not speeches, you know. It says, you know, but trumpets, you can only bring down you know, used to say, bring down the walls of Jericho. He's never heard of the trumpets building anything up, you see. That was his philosophy. And therefore, when, for example, Mr. Halifax gave him that famous reply, this was, you know, about moral person expediency, you know that, he was burning up all the time. And for example, if I had records of the dressing down that he gave to Creech Jones, when they came to him to appeal to him to withdraw his objections to the trusteeship and so forth at the United Nations. And what the hell do you think did he say?
What did he say to us?
Oh, what didn't he say? He called them every name on the dictionary. Every name in the dictionary. And he says, practically threw him out of the place there. He says, you of all people come to teach me what to do about these things. When every drop of my blood is in this business. When I trusted you and you betrayed me all along the line. I mean, plenty. But what didn't he tell? Look at the letter that he wrote to Armsby Gore. Did you ever read that letter?
Which one? The 1937 letter?
Yes.
After the rejection of the appeal.
Yeah. Read that letter that he wrote to Armsby Gore. The interesting thing is this here. All throughout his policy, he acted like a minimalist before the Jews. But he was a maximalist when he spoke to the Goyim. You see, there's the difference, you see. Everybody come flapping the wings, you know, to Zionist Congress and making big heroic speeches, you know. This is nothing, you know. But when they came before the Goyim, they collapsed. He acted unverkehrt. He said, listen, take it easy, you know. But when because he felt so confident in himself, and he sat down with Bauer or with Churchill or with anybody there, he spoke to them like a man who had no
inferiority complex.
Inferiority complex. That's the whole point, you see. Mm-hmm. Because he knew he was standing. Did you ever read Webster's oration at the London School of Economics? No. About the art of diplomacy? I advise you to read this. The art of diplomacy, where he gives an example. He gives several examples. The most important example is the kind of diplomacy that Weizmann was involved in, and how he talked to various statesmen. You see, he said when he talked to Lloyd George, he spoke of down to Beersheba. Because Lloyd George was a biblical Welshman. It appealed to him. When he spoke to Bauer, he spoke to him about the philosophical implications of the Jewish state. When he spoke to Cecil, he spoke to him about what the Jews can contribute toward the League of Nations, because he was the Machler of the League of Nations. When he spoke to Milner, when he spoke to Milner, the great imperialist general and so forth, statesman, he spoke to him about the tremendous, the bridge between the Middle East and between Europe and the Far East, and Palestine being the Jews, the enormous role that the Jews can play in the sustenance of the British Empire. You see, in other words, each one he gave according to what he felt the other guy wanted to hear. You see, and then he adds, when he spoke to me, Webster said, a junior in the service. At the peace conference, he said to me, you will understand better than all those people what the significance is of a Jewish state, historical significance of a Jewish state. He gives all these, I'm not trying the language that I'm giving it to you now, but you'll find it in this his oration, the art of diplomacy. Here is a man who has nothing, empty hands. He always used to say, I keep, when I go to a British statesman, I keep my hands closed. He said, why? He said, because if the last bit open, you see, I got nothing. You see?
Now, what surprises me is that despite this, his attitude to the Germans was completely different. There was no diplomacy, there was no attempt to understand or anything, there was just pure hatred.
That's right. He never liked the Germans, by the way. He never.
Yes, but
from the very beginning, he never liked the Germans.
But after what happened, he did things that were terrible, really.
What, for example?
Relating it to the action.
No, I can understand. I can understand Weizmann. I'll tell you very often I felt the same way. You know what Churchill said? There are only two kinds of, German. Either at your throat or at your feet. That's how I feel about them. But when you look here, I would suggest to you to read The Merchant of Venice. And there you have all kinds of suitors who are coming to Portia. And there's a German duke who comes to ask for her hand. And what she says to Narissa, her maid, lady in waiting, what she thinks of the German. It's the finest description of a German or of a Nazi, written 400 years ago by a guy by the name of Bill Shakespeare. Read this and you'll begin to understand what these people are.
And you think that was Weizmann's idea as well?
I don't know. I couldn't say what it was. I did hear something about Bergman having the idea, and maybe Bergman may have used Weizmann's authority in doing this, he being a German also, and probably lost part of his family there or something, whatever it may be. It's quite possible. But I would not swear for either of these stories, you see. I did hear something about it.
No, it's a fact. I mean, that's
I'm sure there's listen, I don't, and it's lying in the vault of the Hebrew University. Yeah. Well, maybe 1,000 years from today it'll be revealed. Yeah.
All right. Right, well...